This morning, we are very privileged to have Mike Eskew as our speaker. Mike was chairman and chief executive officer of UPS from 2002 to 2007. He's currently serving on its board of directors. He's also a director for Eli Lilly, 3M, IBM, and he chairs the Annie E. Casey Foundation Board. Mike is a native of Vincennes, Indiana. He graduated from my alma mater, Purdue University. He had a bachelor's degree in industrial engineering there. He started his career with UPS in 1972 and rose through the ranks, as I said, to CEO. And UPS saw unprecedented growth during Eskew's tenure as chairman and CEO. The company's revenues increased by nearly 57%, up to over $47 billion. Net income rose by more than 75%. Under Eskew's leadership, the international packaging revenues more than doubled to $9 billion. Its supply chain and freight revenues quadrupled to $8 billion. And by the end of 2006, that made UPS the world's largest shipping carrier company. Well, that's quite a journey for a company that was founded way back in 1907 by a couple of teenagers who had a bicycle, a $100 loan from a friend, and a basement in Seattle, Washington for its office. Mike and his wife, Molly, split their time between Atlanta, the Brookhaven neighborhood, and Chicago. Mike's an avid reader and golfer and has 4 grown children. Today, Mike's topic is things I've learned, relearned, and I'm still learning. So please join me in welcoming Mike Eskew as our Terry Third Thursday speaker.
Thank you, Dean. If you don't mind, I'll just stay down here with you, and I can just chat with you while we're doing this. Thanks so much. That was kind, and I've forgotten so much of that in my past life. As you go through that list, though, it makes me remember that this is a special year for me. I have 2 milestones this year. This is my 20th anniversary for living in Atlanta, so it's 20 years of Georgia. And over that time, I've gotten to know a number of University of Georgia and Terry College alumni, and I'm impressed with your output. I've measured your output through these wonderful people that are around the room, and you run quite an institution. I'm really delighted to be with you and to be with a number of friends that I see here today. Also, 40 years ago, next month on the 22nd, I'll celebrate my 40th year with UPS. When you said 1972, I was just thinking 40 years. That doesn't seem possible. I'm going to put UPS in perspective, and then I'm going to take you on a journey through UPS over those 40 years. I'm going to talk for the students a little bit about some lessons I've learned and some things that you might come into contact with. And then I'm going to also tell you about a company and how it's changed. So the year before I joined UPS in 1971 was our first $1 billion of revenue year. We were in 37 states in the U.S. So from 1907, when Jim Casey founded the company, to 1971, we'd moved from Seattle to 37 states and up to $1 billion of revenue. Today, UPS is $53 billion in revenue. We are operating in 200 countries around the world. We have 532 aircraft. That would be the 8th largest airline if you measured airlines in that perspective. We have 400,000 employees. We have 100,000 vehicles. We do 15 million packages a day that we pick up from a little over 1 million customers and deliver to just under 8 million customers. Any given day, we have within our pipeline packages moving through the pipeline. 6% of the U.S. GDP moving through our pipeline to 2% of the world GDP moving through the pipeline. So we see commerce, and it's changed a little bit since that billion-dollar company that I went to work for in 1971. But let me tell you about some of the journey and some of the changes that we went through. I did join straight as an engineer out of Purdue in 1972, and I came in and I said to myself, I was going to be new once in this company. And so I had the right to be able to ask all the dumb questions once. I could go places and I could say, why do you do that? How's that work? I could do that with the salespeople as an engineer. I could go to the salespeople. I could go to the people that tracked our packages. I could go to the people that operated our delivery operations or our sort operations. I could go anywhere I wanted and I could say, why do you do it this way? And I would never go to lunch with the people I worked with. I would always go with people I didn't know. And I would always go to coffee with. I made a point to get out of my comfort zone. Things like this were valuable to me. Let's go find places and let's go find people that I can talk to that don't do what I do. And let's ask them what they do. I was at UPS a few months ago. The Casey Foundation still meets at UPS when we meet. And I was joined by some young person that came up to me and said, you know, I always used to like it when you used to come down to the cafeteria and have coffee with us and ask us what we did and why we did it, how did it work, and how do we integrate those things. People notice those kinds of things when you do that, and people appreciate it. And plus, I didn't know. I mean, it was a good chance for me to find out how these things worked that the people were working on. I stayed in Indiana from 72 to 76. And in 76, I worked a little bit on the link up when we completed the 48 states. 76, we made our first foray into international operations. We went to Germany in 1976. I was on that opening team. I was asked to go and essentially do the planning and do the networking for the opening. So I went. We opened up. Germany in those days was two countries. For you young folks, we used to be two Germanys. There was a West and an East Germany. The West was the big one, 64 million. The East was 17 million. We could only operate in the West. So we went to West Germany. We opened up in the West Side, everything from phase one, from Hanover in the north to Stuttgart in the south, essentially, which included Mannheim, Kaiserslautern in that area, the Saarland. And then phase two, we opened up everything north, Kiel, Lübeck, Hamburg, Bremen. I was waiting for somebody in corporate to tell me, when do we go phase three? And nobody told me. And I was supposed to be the person that got all the, we don't call them trucks, package cars we call them. Got all the package cars, got all the authority to be able to move the packages, that we needed the licenses to move from place to place. I was supposed to be the person that got all the packages. I was supposed to be the person that arranged for all the drivers, got the trainers from the US to be able to train the drivers, put the dispatching plans in place. And I kept saying, when are we going to, I don't know how to do it. And the salespeople would come to me and say, we can't sell the product because customers tell us, if you don't give me all of Germany, I don't want to split my shipments. It's not worth going half post, half UPS. We'll give it to you if you give it to all of us. We also had significant growing pains. We really didn't understand the culture like we needed to. We really didn't understand how to staff. We had terrible turnover. We had terrible operating issues. We had a lot of different, couldn't drive those big trucks down those little streets. So we had terrible accidents. We had a lot of different things we had to overcome. But I finally said, I'm taking charge. I'm going to seize the initiative. I'm going to put together a plan and say, we're going to open these 3 centers this week. Then we're going to open those 4. Then we're going to open up these 3. And then we're going to open up those 2. We're going to feed them this way. We're going to get the real estate here. We're going to open them on these dates. And I sent that to the corporate office. And they said, go ahead. And I think the lesson I learned at that time was to take the initiative. You're close to the action. You know, challenge the organization. You know, if you're close, challenge the organization. And I think the thing I learned later on is when people underneath told me things about this is what we need to do, to listen. When people close to the, now I might say I don't buy that. I have a bigger perspective because I know that if we do that, that works here, but overall this is not going to work. But at least you listen to those people that do that. And I learned to challenge the organization, to take the initiative. And I think that was a valuable lesson for me to learn in those days. We came back in 78. I went from a new startup, if you will, business that we didn't know what we were doing in Germany to an established place on the East Coast. We were in DC, Virginia, and Maryland, essentially. And I was responsible for planning, for dispatching, I was the engineering manager for that part of the country. So this was in a time when, and some of you remember these days. It was a regulated industry. Transportation was a regulated industry. The DOT regulated us. A number of different organizations that I've luckily forgotten used to regulate us. And we could not change our rates. We couldn't change our routes. We couldn't change our services. We were restricted. We couldn't pick up, if we picked up 100 packages from one customer, we had to distribute those. We couldn't send them all to the same. There was a 100-pound limit from customer to customer, then we had to make sure it distributed. We couldn't operate within certain states. We didn't have intrastate authority in a lot of places. Very regulated. And we, like I said, we couldn't change our rates. The only way, and very, 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 the only way we could make money is we had to be the best operators. And operations and efficiency and the tightest ship in the shipping business was born. And all we could think about is how do we operate this thing? So we got to be terrific at operating. We knew how to manage it, where to manage it, how to put the best operating plans, how to test them, how to implement them. But most importantly, and what I want to talk about, is we learned how to measure. We measured everything that moved. And if it didn't move, we kicked it and we made it move. Because we measured, we used to say we knew how long it takes the driver to walk to your doorstep and how long it takes you to answer the door. We measured everything. And it was the way we were efficient and the way we could make our money. Now, then we would come to work and we managed the business based on the measurement. How many hours were these drivers over allowed? How many operations, how many hours do we have excess in this sort? How many hours did it take too long to clean this building? And we went to work on all those places and tried to make it as efficient as we could. We ranked and rated them. We called them, and nobody wanted to be in a race with this measurement. But if you were in a race, nobody wanted to finish last. So we didn't call them worst, we called them least best. We called them most help needed. And so we would go into those places and we would work on them. And we would make the least best the best. And work on those things all the time. We had the best operating plans. The key was measurement. We came in every day and we looked, every driver, every operation, every place, what's it take to make this thing better? Where do they lose their time? How can we make them more efficient? What kind of tools do we need to give them? And we fixed it. And it was really an ongoing process to do that. Measurement is very important. Since our business has gotten more complex, we've changed the measurement. We've gone from what was very simple efficiency measurement to more of a balanced scorecard. And the balanced scorecard is people measures, financial measures, internal business practice measures, and customer measures. And we try to balance, and we don't rank and rate on any one side, but we rank and rate the overall today. And that's been very good for us to be able to do those kinds of things. I will also say if you do compensation based on some kind of performance measures, be careful what you measure, you're going to get it. So you better think long and hard about what it is you want to measure. Measurement is vital. And there's a lot of people that say measurement causes problems with integrity and ethics and people cheat because of measurement. I mean, people have to have ethics. But without measurement, you can't improve your operation. It was a big deal for us to be able to work in these things, do something with it every day, and measure results. Measurement was a real key for UPS in those days. I was in Maryland for 4 years, and by this time we'd have a kid at each of these places. And I was asked to go to, California. And I was going to be responsible for the overall West Coast. This was one place I would have 6 of these places on the West Coast. And I like that because those people never moved that had those jobs. I figured I'd go someplace and I wouldn't have to move anymore in California. I also thought that I didn't want to do the job because every day I saw drivers and every day I saw packages. And every day I knew I could make progress. I would be a teacher. I'd be a step away. I would not be involved with it. I would be helping others get to be more. I would help others do what we did. The UPS had just linked the East and West. I knew what was going on in the East. I think they wanted some of the East Coast people to work on the West Coast to make us more consistent. So I went to the West Coast, did that job, and I think the thing I learned the most about was how much how gratifying it could be, and it was good for me to learn this at age 30 or 31 or whatever I was at the time, gratifying it was for me to be able to stand back, help other people be successful, watch them get the credit, and be really gratified to give others the credit. That was a good lesson to learn for somebody at my age. I think I always wanted to be in the limelight. That got me a chance to step back and let others take the credit. And I don't think I probably understood that as much as we could put these operations in, we could do these things, and then those folks could do the things that we wanted to do. I noticed that today when I was at UPS, there was a particular group that used to come in to speak to the board often. And one woman would bring her people in, and this woman would always stand in the back, and her people would always give us do all the things, tell us all what was going on in the business, answer all the questions. She never did anything except smile. And I used to tell her, if you don't think people don't notice that, I mean, that you are a leader. You've trained your people, you've given them, you've made them successful, you've moved them on, and people notice that. And had I not gone through that and watched that, I'm also on another board, and I was in a board meeting recently, and a business leader came in and with 3 of his people, and he made a terrific presentation. Went through this whole thing, answered every question. His people did nothing. And I went to the CEO afterwards and I said, you know, this guy's got the business. He's terrific. He really understands it, but I really wonder what kind of leader he is, because his people didn't do a thing. He did all of it. And people notice those kinds of things, so be careful when you go through that. I was in California for 2 years. And on April 9th, 1984, I remember exactly, it was 2 days after my youngest was born, my boss came to me and said, UPS is just, we're going to move into the airlines. We want you to be the engineering planning manager for the UPS airline. And that's going to be in the corporate office in Greenwich, Connecticut. And I thought, well, you know, I said, I don't want to do that job. I really don't want to be, this is a package business. I don't want to be in a niched piece of the package business. I like to stay in the overall general piece of the business. And I like what I'm doing. We're making a lot of progress. I like the people we're working with. Let me think about it. 2 days later, I took it. And I thought, if you go to corporate, where are you going to go? I mean, I'm done. I'm done for sure. I don't have to move anymore. So we went to Greenwich, and we started building the airline. It was a lot of fun. It was back almost like to Germany. It was starting all over. We'd never done these kinds of things. It was the same principle. I was building a network of hubs and routes and where we were going to move packages and how we were going to move them, what kind of airplanes we were going to buy and fly and what we were going to do. And my boss came to me one day and said, Bob Crandall just called. American Airlines wants to get out of the freighter business. They only want to focus on packages, or on people rather. They want to get out of the freighter business. I said, that's interesting. And he said, well, do you want to buy their freighter business? And I'm sitting there thinking, wonder what they've got. We need ground support equipment, the stuff that moves things into airplanes, tugs and dollies and loaders. Okay, makes some sense. And he said, and they've got 747s. So I'm thinking, okay, 747s. 1, 2, 3. I know where I can do 4 of them. He said, well, they've got 6. You want them or not? It takes this long. This is how long this conversations last when he's having this. He said, 6. I said, so I stall. That's the only thing I could do. I said, what do they cost? I mean, what would you ask? What do they cost? $25 million each. And he said, you want them or not? I said, we'll take them. I had no idea what we were going to do with them. And my wife, the next week or so, said, you know, you're not sleeping, you're not eating. I said, I've ruined the company. I don't know what I was thinking about, but I didn't know what I was going to do with these other 2 airplanes. I'm going to fly these 4 of these places, and 2 we're going to park someplace, I guess. I think the lesson I learned, it was to deal with ambiguity. You're always going to have to make decisions with less than perfect information. Always going to have to do those kinds of things. Luckily, I also had confidence in the organization. We were going to do these things. Today we have 523 aircraft. We've retired those 6 long ago, I think. Yeah, but, and we bought, 757s and 767s since then. But I've made lots of decisions with not much more information than just that. But I trusted the organization that we could do these things. I knew we had a plan. I knew we had a vision. I knew we could do those things. And I knew that this was going to work. Luckily it did. But I also knew that I wasn't going to get caught in that situation again. So we built an organization that had network planners that do nothing but plan the network from January through Thanksgiving. And then Christmas planners, because the volume triples. It triples at Christmas. They do nothing every year. They start in January and plan for the period between Thanksgiving and Christmas. And then we had long-range planners that do nothing but think about 10 years from now, these are the routes we're going to fly around the world. Here's the kind of aircraft we need. So they're the ones that said we need to buy 757s and 767 and the 747-400 to replace the 100s that we bought. Then we need to buy some Airbuses. Then we need to do a lot of different things. They moved us into all these things. And we built some algorithms that would test us how we can determine are we flying the best routes or not, because it's so important that you minimize the number of excess hours. I mean, part of the things I learned in the Maryland district about excess hours always stays with you, and we measured them all. So those are the things I think I learned when we were there. We were in Connecticut for 9 months. It got to be very obvious that this was going to be a big airline. This was going to be a big business, and we needed to be close to the operation. So we moved to Louisville, where the air business was. And so we lived in Louisville for 4 years. And during that time, we were building the airline, getting to be important and big and doing all the things we needed to do. But we were also building our technology, IT technology as a company. And today we're an IT company. But back then we used our computers only for data processing, for payroll, and for billing. So as we started to move into technology, the CEO at the time said, Mike, we want to form a steering committee, umbrella committee to think about how we use technology. Well, for the airline, I knew what I wanted. I mean, you had to have routing plans, communications plans, flight following plans, maintenance plans, crew planning plans, weight and balance plans, so you don't put the wrong weight in the wrong part of the airplane to make it fly the way you don't want it to fly. Those kinds of things is the way I knew we had, and it was all integrated. We had a great IT plan for the air business. But they wanted us to put one together for the company. They wanted me to sit on the umbrella organization. My boss that ran the airline said, I like your plan. Makes a lot of sense. You've got a great IT plan. Go up there and get it. And so we'd meet. And I'd come back, and the rest of the business would talk about, we want to put together a database that puts all the packages in it and tracks them electronically. I'd say, well, that's better than mine. Or we want to give each driver an acquisition device like a computer so they don't have to write these things down on paper like they have today. So, well, that's better than mine. I would come back each time and say, we got better. We gave them what they wanted. We didn't take what we can do without. And I think the thing I learned about is how you can try to get big perspectives. I mean, everybody's organizations fights for resources, whether that's money, whether it's people, and increasingly it's technology. I can only do so much without the technology. And when you sit in an umbrella organization, a big business with a number of different organizations in it, technology spread. Who's going to get the next technology dollar? That's a very difficult allocation. It's very difficult for people at the top. As CEO, I had a very difficult time trying to determine what that was. People that were close could help us make those kinds of decisions. We did put that infrastructure together to help us think through how we allocated technology dollars. And it was very vital for us to be able to grow all together. That was a good lesson for me to learn at the time. I was in Atlanta, I was in Louisville for 5 more years. My boss came to me and said, we want you to get out of air. And I said, I don't want to get out of air. I love air. I thought air was just, there's something about airlines you get in your blood. I think it's jet fuel. And I said, I don't want to get out of air. And they said, we need you to be an overall general manager, and we want to send you back and let you run one of our operations on the ground. Well, I hadn't been on the ground face-to-face since I left Maryland 8 years ago. lots changed. And I thought, well, okay, I'll go someplace like Iowa or someplace easy. They're going to send me a rookie place and make sure that it all works out. And they said, we want you to run New Jersey. I said, oh, God. And we have some Teamster issues and some labor issues, but you can do that. I said, oh, God. Here we go. So I moved everybody into New Jersey. And what was that HBO series? Sopranos. It was a lot like that. But it was the best place we ever lived. And I used to every day mix it up with these drivers and sorters and come in and let's talk about the Mets and the Jets and the teams that I didn't like. And we'd do all this stuff, and it was terrific. These were the best people. I just couldn't have picked a better place to be. And I learned a lot about leadership, about what leadership was all about. And it really got down to, well, these people were Teamsters. They were also UPSers. And they also wanted to be very successful. They wanted to have a future. And all we needed to do was say, this is our vision. This is our plan. And we can't do it without you. Then you had to put your money where your mouth was. Every day, rather than come in and talk about production, the first question I would come in and say, did anybody get hurt yesterday? And if people got hurt, then let's put together joint committees about how we can eliminate injuries. And let's put that between management and labor. Let's put these groups together and let's talk about how we're going to work together to minimize injuries. When you tell people you're concerned about them, it goes a long way. When it came to operating efficiency, we had such terrible turnover issues that we couldn't keep a stable workforce. So I would come in and say, did anybody quit yesterday? And what do we do to keep them? What's it take? Why are people leaving? What do we need to do to make this a better experience? How do we train them better? And when we kept people, our performance got better. It was all about, we're going to be a company where people can come to work and be safe. We're going to be a company where people can come to work and have an enjoyable experience, make a living, and go home to their families and support their families. We're going to be a company that's going to grow and you're going to have opportunities. And those kinds of things people understood. And we can't do it without you. You need to do the things that only you can do. And that's a valuable lesson I learned in New Jersey. It's like, you go to college and your parents move and they don't tell you. Well, I went to New Jersey and the corporation moved. They came to Atlanta. So I didn't know where they were. And they said, we want you to come to Atlanta. We want you to come to corporate. And I knew where they were. We want you to come to corporate and run the engineering groups. I said, okay, I'll do that. I figured, they can't move me anymore. So I come to Atlanta. And before I was CEO, which this was 20 years ago, what had changed over the time is that commerce had changed. Commerce historically was always about three distinct movements. The movement of information, which was orders, entries, and tracking and that kind of stuff. That was a physical movement. I want you to give me this thing. You cut it out of the magazine, you sent it in. It was a piece of paper you sent in. That's the movement of information. The movement of goods, which was out of inventory to production, from production to finished goods to the shipper. That's the movement of goods. That's the second movement. And then after that was done, it's the movement of funds. So you owe me. A lot of that was face-to-face. You owe me. So those were the three distinct movements. E-commerce there was a confluence of those three separate movements with e-commerce. And it was a disruptive technology for people in our space. If you don't find ways to facilitate that confluence of those three segments, you're going to be threatened. And if you don't think about disruptive technologies, ask Borders and Barnes & Nobles and Kodak and the post office about disruptive technologies. Every firm will have disruptive technologies. Those that are successful, like UPS and IBM and Lilly and 3M, have found ways to deal with disruptive technologies. What we said is we're going to find ways. Our first thing, just to put things in perspective to begin with, this is how broken we were when we came. I went to a meeting about the first Friday I was in Atlanta, and the marketing people were doing terrific things. Very strong culture, very strong silos, very strong coming out of a regulated environment. We're going to increase our package weight next week to 70 pounds from 50, which it had always been. And the salespeople said, well, how are we going to sell it? And the billing people said, how are we going to bill it? And the operating people said, well, how are we going to deliver it? And the engineering people said, what kind of equipment do you need to move it? And they said, well, we don't know, but we're going to do it Monday. It was that segmented kind of thought. How do you do those things, move as fast as you need to, use this new confluence, and be able to do things more efficiently? So we thought about it. And a lot of people said, what we want you to do is track every package. Well, and how are we going to do that? Well, just scan it every time you move it. I said, if we do that, we'll be the brokest, smartest company in the world, because you're going to scan everything and get nothing out of it. Let's think about how we put the organization, flip it sideways, and get something for it, so that if we give a customer a shipping platform, and they take an order and it integrates, that shipment becomes the label. It goes back to their inventory system. That label creates information for us. That information for us transmits to us so that we can see what's coming. We scan it. We can tell people downstream this is what's coming. We know what's coming. We can optimize our dispatches. We can scan that package when we load it. It will tell us what truck, what position, what day. We move it on. We can descale this whole thing. We can optimize the routing. We can make sure we never turn left. We always turn right. We can do all these kinds of things we've always wanted to do. If you told us what we were going to get the day before we got it, we could dispatch real well. Well, that's what we just got. And then given all that, we can descale our hub operations. We can build in Louisville where every package is smart, that every package sorts itself. So we built a hub in Louisville, and we started building that hub. It was like the 747s. It's $1 billion building. People kept telling me 985. I said, sure, it's $1 billion. And it turned out to be more. But it sorts 425,000 packages an hour. But we built that building, and the only way it would work is if every package could sort itself and was smart. When we made a decision, none of them were. By definition, this place can't work. But let's build it for $1 billion. And it was all based on, we'll get that information as it comes to us, and we'll be able to pre-alert it so that we know that every package is smart when we get it. Everything we did was all based on that. So it was customer information, that became product management, that became package management. Given that package management, we can now start doing things with new products. We can introduce things like guarantees. I'll guarantee the package, and if it's not there, you'll get your money back. You can do My Choice, which is a new product, basically, that said you can intercept it, you can reroute it, you can tell us what time you want it delivered. You can say not at the hotel, but at the house, not at the house, but at the office. You could tell us that as it's on its way. That's using information to do those kinds of things. And then given that, that's with the new products we were building, Quantum View, you can start to look into the supply chain, and you can see not only what's in my back room, what's coming. So that was the new products we were going to build. And then with customer relationship management, we can start to go to customers and say, we can do these things for you. These are the unique services we can do for you. So we built those 4 processes that cross functions and took advantage of the confluence of those 3 separate flows. In 2002, January, I became chairman. We did an offsite soon afterwards. We said, what kind of company do we want to be? In 2007, on our 100th anniversary, during that time before I was chairman, I was responsible for the new businesses. That's the logistics businesses, the IT, and the strategy. And we were buying a lot of different small companies, logistics companies, brokerage companies. We bought the UPS stores, which were MBEs. We bought some airlines. We bought a bank in Connecticut so we could do factoring and funds flow, because that was one of the 3 flows of commerce. We did a lot of different acquisitions. They were all separate. And what came out of that offsite, what kind of company do we want to be? The long and short of it is we want to use technology because the internet allows us to be able to, allows small companies to act big. Small companies can put their products out there and they can look as big as IBM. But they're only operating in their basement. But you can't tell. It camouflages size. Well, it allowed us to act small. Despite having 8 million receiving customers and 1 million shipping customers, we could treat each one as if they were the only one we had. We had 15 million packages. We could find each one like it was a needle in the haystack. And we could start to act like we were a small company. So that was one thing that came out of it. The other thing that came out of it was solutions are better than products. So we became a solutions company. And by that I mean you don't sell, all this became one company. How can you put logistics and fulfillment and distribution and brokerage and package delivery all together and then go to customers and say, not how do we deliver your packages, but how do we enable your commerce? And that solutions are powerful. It really is what differentiates us from our competitors. They sell products, we sell solutions. It's very difficult to do from a sales perspective. To do it, we had to do 5 things. We had to build our capabilities. We did that largely through acquisitions. We did buy all this company through acquisitions. We had to change our brand. Each of our brands, Worldwide Logistics, UPS Second Day Air, UPS Next Day Air, UPS Ground, UPS 3-Day Select, all had different colors. Our shipping systems, our shipping outlets were white, they were blue, they were yellow in Europe, they were white in Asia. We put them all on a wall with our brand company, and they said, that's your wall of shame. If you want to be one company, you are everywhere. So we did the whole what can Brown do for you? That was and do was more than ship, and you was one-to-one. So what can Brown do for you? That's what we really wanted to do, create that one thing. So we had to change the brand, we had to change the capabilities, we had to change the way we thought about customers, not what's in it for us, what's in it for you, how do we go to you, how do we segment so that we can tell you, you could go places you don't know about. You can do things you don't know about. We can do these things for you. How do you do that with customers? Then we had to move technology so that we could make it the needle in the haystack. But most importantly, we had to go to each of those people, 400,000 people, and say, that's the company we're going to become, and we can't do it without you. Unless you deliver that package the way we need you to, unless you load it, unless you sort it, unless you write the technology, unless you fly that aircraft the way you need to, we can't do it. The rest of it's bricks and mortar and bits and bytes. That's blood, sweat, and tears, and it's what creates the light that makes us the company we are. So that's what really was all about. So I retired in 2008. So I still serve on the board, and I still chair the Casey Foundation, and we do all those kinds of things I just described to Casey. I'm going to stop there and give you a few minutes to hopefully to ask some questions.
As you ask questions, we are recording this, and it's a pretty wide room, so please hold up your hand. We'll get you a microphone, and that way we can all hear your question and get it recorded as well. So, Jim?
Very much visible. That's a different model than some companies where the CEOs retire and go off into the sunset. Tell us a little bit about the top leadership of UPS and what makes it different.
Well, those are two of my heroes that you mentioned. I was the 9th CEO, Scott's the 10th. You don't think about this as my company. It's our company, and I'm no different than the other 400,000. We do things and we try to reinforce that. It's democracy with a small d. We treat each other the same. It's all a partnership. We were historically a partnership. I don't get to eat at my desk or drink coffee at my desk. We do that all in the cafeteria because we don't let drivers do that. At least we tell drivers, don't eat in your package car. Don't drink coffee in your package car. So we do all those kinds of, but I never flew on private jets. I always flew in commercial jets. We don't let each other do those things. So it's all that kind of stuff. I still serve on the board. We asked the previous chairman to serve on the board. That's not an easy thing to do. Sometimes how can you keep your mouth shut is the biggest challenge. And I'm not real good at that sometimes. But those are the kinds of things. But it is you realize that you don't run the business. Those people that, like the job I had in New Jersey, those people run the business. They really make it work, and I think you get that perspective over time. Jim.
Hi, Mike. I had a question about playing it by the book. How do you feel about your looking back at all those years? Did you always play by the book, or did you sometimes have to do something that nobody else could have, supported at some point?
Everybody get that? Did I always follow the rules, or did I sometimes break the rules because we needed to break the rules? Jim Casey, our founder, really was a terrific guy, and we talked about, things that change all the time, strategies, mission. Things that change occasionally, like the purpose. We used to say we were a package delivery company. Now we enable global commerce. But things that never change are the values that Jim Casey brought. That's core that never changes. And you treat others the way you want to be treated. When you say you're going to do something, you do it, and you do things the right way. And if you have that as a beacon, we're going to go that way. It gives you a lot of latitude. We're going to do things the right way. I don't know that I played by the book. In Germany, when we said we were going to, I could have probably just sat there and waited for somebody in corporate to give me a notice. I'd probably still be there waiting for, when are we going to go? Luckily it's the organization that allowed folks like that to have, and I would go to people in the cafeteria and say, what do we need to do here? And I don't know. You're going to follow the values, but you've got enough latitude within those values. You can do a lot of things. Yeah. Steve.
Two questions. One, why did you choose Louisville for your hub? And then two, what do you see as the future between companies and labor unions, and how to make that work well?
Louisville, we mapped, we did a lot of Centroid type applications, where all the flights come from, where we can ground from. And it wasn't by accident. The Purelator was in Cincinnati, and Emory was in Dayton, and Airborne was in Wilmington, and we were in Louisville. Weather was part of it. We thought weather was marginally better in Louisville. It was, that crescent was optimal. FedEx was in Memphis. That was a big, that cost them a lot to be in Memphis, from where you can ground from and where you can fly from. The more planes have to fly longer distances to get to Memphis. It was a very difficult thing. They've mitigated that by opening a second hub in Indianapolis, which allows them to take some of the bite off of that. But from an optimal location, that whole Ohio River area was optimal. The next place, I'm not going to tell you the next place we're going to open one up, but but I know where we should open it. But it really is optimal. We could ground. We could take the spike off of Columbus. We could go to Louisville, Lexington, Indianapolis, Cincinnati, Dayton. We could take a little bit of the spike off of Nashville. And on the second day, we could really ground from as far away as Pittsburgh. So it's really an optimal location for us. Labor unions, we have great relationships. We've been members of the Teamsters for 80 years. We've had one bad incident in 1997, but that was more a personality issue with the guy that ran that than us. But I really do think you got 400 of the employees. We probably have 150,000 Teamsters, maybe not quite that many, maybe 100,000 Teamsters. Our pilots are organized. Everybody's pilots were organized. Machinists were organized. I think it takes a little bit of work. I mean, you have to tell people we can create something here and give your people great livelihoods, pensions, retirements, health care, but we all have to do this together. And you can be a good UPSer and a good Teamster, and people understand that. We don't always agree. I mean, there's lots of times we on different sides of issues. I mean, it always amazed me. Every 40 packages we create, every 40 packages that goes to and from international creates a job. How the Teamsters could oppose that. Because, I mean, you're doing nothing but creating jobs. Why they could be anti-trade. But, you know, that's part of some of the heritage. We would agree to disagree on trade, even though we'd give you more jobs if we do trade. So those are kinds of things that you don't always agree, but I had good relationships with all those folks. And I did 2 national contracts. And I always thought both of them were win-win. I always used to say, how much can we afford to be fair to the people here? And that's kind of the way we approached it. Let me just spread this out a little bit here. William, go ahead.
Just a quick question. What was the biggest foul up on your watch?
Oh, too many to count.
There's got to be one that sticks in mind.
I don't know. I mean, I don't have any regrets. I've made a lot of mistakes. I mean, I can't tell you which one I would think about. You know, my problem, let me just tell you, my problem was I took everything way too personally. If you're with this organization that it's you, I mean, you just feel like you're part of it. And something goes wrong, you feel like I should have done better. So when we lose a package that's got encrypted material that gets all over the press, you think I should have done something. Well, I never saw that package. I don't know that we ever picked it up. I mean, I'm not sure that we ever even saw it, we ever got it. But those are the kinds of, I took all that stuff way too personal. I mean, you really should be able to distance yourself, but that would bother me, and that probably shouldn't have. But other than that, I can't think of too many things I would do differently. I mean, everything worked out about the way we wanted to. I did not answer every question in some of these things the way I should have, though. So, anyway. John?
Yeah,
Can we get this?
Can you comment on what you think the future of the post office is and how it may affect the
future of the post office? You know, that's in committee. The Senate's talking about that today, I think. Government Accounting Office said the business model is not sustainable. Jack Potter, their previous Postmaster General, said in the next 10 years they're going to lose, I think, $250 billion. They need to change the business model. If you look at the revenue, first-class mail, and I don't know what they call junk mail. I don't mean that. I just don't know what there's a term for the advertising mail that you get, but you know what I mean. It's on a steady, progressive slope downward. There's a disruptive technology that's threatened their business model. They need so much revenue to sustain this whole thing. I will say something about the post office. People say, why don't you run it? They've got great management. It's not their management. If somebody told you that you've got to keep open 30,000 post offices, 22,000 of which lose money, you've got to keep them open. You've got to deliver 6 days a week. You've got to do it to every address in the U.S. You've got to do it when your revenue base is going like this. And you've got to do it and not lose money. That's hard to do. I think that they need to change the business model. I don't know if there's anybody in the press here, so I don't really want to talk about how I would change it. But they're going to have to raise revenue. So increase in rates is going to be something that's going to happen. They're going to have too many different organizations. We have a board of directors in most places. They've got 5 or 6 different commissions they have to answer to. They have to have the ability to close a lot of those post offices. The Postmaster General asked to be able to stop delivering on Saturday. I don't know why not. I live in Chicago. Just do a test for yourself. I live in Chicago a little over 6 months a year. I get my mail forwarded from Atlanta. I get them once a week. I don't notice. I mean, put your mail in a bag and open it once a week and tell me how much you need it. I mean, if you're like me, I get everything electronically. Everything I want to get, I get They're delivering it 6 days a week, and they're driving a lot of miles to do it.
My question is also on the line of future growth and what the future looks like, but it's a little bit broader. What's the industry's futures going to look like for 5 years from now? What's going to happen to the industry? I mean, you have a lot of new ideas in place and in flight as well. What's it going to look like?
You know, I'm bullish. I'm always bullish on the industry. We grow. This industry generally grows faster than GDP. GDP's not been growing as fast as it needs to. UPS is still only, I mean, despite the moves we've made in international, we're growing well in international. We're doing well in our supply chain businesses. We're doing well because we put these things together. Despite that, we're still only 70 or 26% of our revenue comes not from the U.S. So we have a lot of opportunities to do things not in the U.S. A lot of these new solutions are going to be able to allow people to do things they've never been able to do. So I'm bullish on the industry. I think this economy. I mean, there's a couple things that will burden the industry. If trade becomes difficult and burdensome, then that's going to be not good for the industry. And if the GDP doesn't, if we don't get some kind of growth, we're not going to grow in the U.S. Now we'll grow outside the U.S., but we won't grow in the U.S.
Okay, we've got time for one more question.
Mike, thanks for
I'll
coming.
get some afterwards too. Okay.
Mike, thanks again for coming today. Since my two questions of how many Gulfstreams UPS owns has been answered and why you can't eat at your desk has been answered, my question is is more of a personal side question, all the moves you made with your family over the years and the workforce that you see today, what are your comments on that?
We've lived, I used to give a talk like that, kind of like that. I'd changed, never done it the same way twice. But for all the new, I used to do all the new orientations for new people that would come to work in the corporate office, and it was kind of like that. And the reason I did that was to let people know you might be asked to move, you might be asked to work nights, you might be asked to do those kinds of things. We lived in 9 places, I think. You go back and you ask your kids, which one would you give up? It's almost like asking them, which sibling would you give up, you know? Although I think they tell me which sibling, but they may not tell me which move would they give up? Because if we hadn't done that, I brought 2 kids here, juniors and seniors in high school. And one was a National Merit Scholar, was going to go as a senior to take courses at Princeton University when we lived in New Jersey. He said, listen, they've all been good, let's go down there. And they wouldn't give up any of them. And they're better at meeting people than I was. They're better at being in new situations than I was. And, you know, despite some of the things they went through, they all had moments when they needed each other too. So I think that was good for all of us. What was the other one you asked?
Oh, you answered the one about how many jets you own.
Oh, I don't own any jets.
And why you can't eat at your desk.
Okay. It's been terrific. Thanks so much. I tried to do 40 years and as quick as I could, and I didn't do justice to a lot of those things, but I'll answer any other questions you've got afterwards. Thanks so much.
Okay. Thanks very much, Mike. Really appreciate that. I know everyone in the room does. And on behalf of our alumni, I'd like to present you with this glass sculpture from a local artist, Loretta Eby. We really appreciate what you've done for us today.
Thank you so much.
Thank
It's
you.
great. I've got just the place for this.